Good afternoon, good morning, hi everybody. Hi. Let's just move over here now. Hi everybody. Oh, I didn't fix this. But yeah. Congratulations on first high tech. Welcome in, welcome in. And Rain, welcome. Congratulations for getting second. Welcome in. You got no. I'm gonna call it that now. It's called barking rights. Um, Rain, you are a cloud. You are massive, but that's awesome because big clouds are cool. High Tech 318 reporting in for pre-reading shenanigans 07. I actually need to get into reading as quick as possible. Cause actually, no, I think I'm good. I think I'm okay to read through it normally, but I don't want to be going too long because I do have archery that I gotta go to at some point tonight. And I got hit with a second ad break. Man, that's not cool. I turned pre-rolls off. I'll have to look into that better. But so are you back now or okay, you're back. Yeah, I'll have to look into why ads are doing that because I ran an ad at the end of my starting up, so pre-rolls would stop. Just now? Okay. So, as I was saying, I do need to get into it quickly just because I have 3 chapters in epilogue and bloopers to read. And I have to go to archery at some point tonight. So I do want to get it done as fast as I can. But if I can't get it done before I have to leave, I'll just finish up what I didn't finish on Sunday when I re-record chapters 1 through 3. Oh, I was about to use the Bark Girl redeem on you because of barking rights. Uh, thank you for sparing me because my mom is in her office right above me, and I'd rather not. Get reading? Okay, I'll read now. One moment. All right. I am ready to read. You'll behave for once. I appreciate it, Tech. Oh, it's not. Oh my gosh. I have to update my stream thing. We're starting on chapter 18, not 17. Oops. Oopsie doodles. Can't make you late for archery. Technically, I can leave at any time in the next like 3 or 4 hours, but I want to be out there a little earlier so that way I can come home and get in bed for work tomorrow. Okay. Chapter 18. Elder Whitehall had never felt so miserable in his life. He had long since closed the bleeding sword wound on his shoulder. Such injuries were only minor irritations to anyone with jade madra and an iron body. But the spirit was exhausted, and an 8-year-old's legs were not suited to trudging through snow. He felt as though his knees would buckle with every step. and the few scraps of Madra he could scrape up were spent melting his way forward with beams of hot gold. Especially grating was the knowledge that he could have been back at the school by now, a hot mug of tea in his hand, and hundreds of disciples rushing out to find Wei Shi Linden and the Sword Girl. He would have reached the Heaven's Glory School long ago, but that wasn't where he decided to go. He clung to that decision with dogged resolve. He was heading to the ancestor's tomb. The tomb was actually closer than the school, but the way was anything but clear. There were no roads out here. He had to scale rock faces and push his way through snow with no Madra and a child's body. If he'd known, he would have brought a 1,000-mile cloud. With every agonizing step, he was tempted to turn back, but he never did. The sword disciple had been making her way closer to the tomb for the better part of 2 weeks now, and now that she had help from the Unsouled, he had every reason to believe that they'd head straight for her master's body. He could bring in help, give away the credit, and never see a single one of the Sword Sage's fantastic treasures. Or Samara's ring was a bright line in the sky when he reached the ancestor's tomb. The tomb predated their school by unknown centuries, a titanic monument to an age-long past perched at the edge of the mountainside. Behind it was a sheer 1,000-foot drop and a picturesque view of distant snowy peaks. The building itself was bigger than anything in Heaven's Glory, a square mausoleum that stood proudly on vast pillars. Far above Whitehall's head, a mural of 4 gigantic beasts locked in battle rose over the entrance. A man and a woman in Heaven's Glory colors waited on the steps at the bottom, huddled behind the pillars against the wind. They wore purple sashes, only a step away from Whitehall's gold, and their badges were jade. Every elder was a jade, but not every jade was an elder. These two had no problems in their mastery of the sacred arts, but they were too young to actually administrate the school, so Whitehall outranked them both. He'd counted on that. Once he knew they'd seen him, he allowed himself to pitch forward and fall into a patch of snow. It didn't require much acting. Footsteps crunched rapidly through the snow, and the male guard shouted something to his partner. Seconds later, a pair of hands scooped up Whitehall's body and carried him to the steps. Ordinarily, he would resent the indignity of being treated like a child, but his relief outweighed any irritation. At last, he was off his feet. Elder White... Wait. Elder Whitehall? The woman asked anxiously. Are you wounded? We'll send for healers now. Whitehall reached out blindly and seized her hand. No! He wasn't pleased by how young and weak his voice sounded. Please, I will recover soon, and my pride could not stand the blow. Through half-closed lids, Whitehall saw the Jade Guards exchange glances. Of course, we will shelter you, Elder. If I may ask, why did you come to us? Why not return to the school? Whitehall struggled up to a sitting position, grimacing in pain that was only half feigned. It was my shame that I was wounded by the sword disciple before I could defeat her. How could I show my face as an elder if I returned without victory? I couldn't. I will rest here for a night or two, and when I am recovered, I will show her the wrath of Heaven's Glory. The guards bowed to him. Your words are wise, Elder, the woman said. We have a hut just to the side of the tomb. It is nothing much, but you are welcome to it. Whitehall returned a seated bow. When the sword disciple is dead, I will remember this favor. They brightened. If Whitehall killed the sage's disciple, he would instantly gain status in the school, and a favor from him would become that much more valuable. A screech like a razor sliding along the rock echoed from the ancestor's tomb, ringing in the air and stabbing his ears. The guards winced and backed up together, returning to face the tomb. The sound faded a second later. But Whitehall already wondered if his ears were bleeding. Is that the remnant? Whitehall asked. The male guard kept his hand on his weapon. It was a club, Whitehall noted, not the sort he would have expected. The sage has been quiet for over a week, but last night he started up again. Elder, when you return to the school, I humbly request that you send reinforcements to us before our shift is up. If he escapes, we will not be enough to contain him. Whitehall rapped his knuckles against the man's wrist, as he would discipline a student. Cowardice is not fitting for a warrior of heaven's glory. That is not the sword sage. It is only a remnant. I do not mean to contradict the elder, the woman said, but last night the remnant did that. She pointed to the top of the tomb, just above and to the side of the beast mural. In the harsh light of Samara's halo, colors were muted and edges sharp. He squinted at the corner of the building, along the side of the roof, trying to distinguish between the folds of shadow. Finally, he saw it. And he took in a breath of freezing air. Between the roof and the wall, there was a crack. It was difficult to see if you weren't looking for, but now that he stared directly at the spot, he could see it. A slice of deeper shadow where the tomb's ancient wall had been split open. It looked as though a massive blade had slipped into the top of the wall, opening a wound. That's, he began, but he had no words. The ancestor's tomb was set with deep, ancient scripts that had gathered vital aura into those walls for centuries. They should be next to indestructible by now. A remnant has done that? The elder knows best, the male guard said, without a trace of mockery in his tone. But I thought he should be made aware. After I recover, I will return here with reinforcements, Whitehall promised. He actually meant it. He let them guide him back to their hut on the edge of the cliff, drape a snow fox pelt over his shoulders, and heat fish soup for him. If he understood the sword disciple's character correctly, she would be here tomorrow, or a day later at the most. And if he grasped the scope of his power, she would tear through these two jades. He hoped they would survive. They had been kind to him, after all, but death in combat was the most honorable end for a sacred artist. If they died for their weakness, he would not be to blame. And once the girl opened the ancestor's tomb, she would have to face the remnant of her formidable master. Either it would kill her unassisted, or Whitehall would take advantage of her distraction to kill her himself. After that, there was no losing scenario for him. A remnant of the sword aspect was powerful in combat but weak in pursuit, so he would be able to escape. Either he would retrieve the treasures on the sword sage's body, or he would return to the school with the sword disciple's head. In that case, He would have rendered such merits to Heaven's Glory School that he should end up with some prizes regardless. As for the Unsouled, if he knew it was good for him, he would never show up here. There was nothing he could do but die. With his pack on, Lyndon crouched in the shadow of the Lesser Treasure Hall as it glistened in the pure white light. There were no guards on the porch at this time, just a locked door with security scripts and deadly constructs behind it. He glanced over at Yaren, who stood openly in the street. He'd already explained the security measures to her, but he wasn't sure she'd heard him. The script will trigger if we break in, he reminded her. She adjusted the blood-red ropes around her waist, which stood out in stark contrast to her white Heaven's Glory clothes. And the script's in the doorframe. That was not right. And the script's in the and the script's in the doorframe. She didn't whisper. Dang it, I already forgot how I wanted to do her accent. And the script's in the doorframe. No, that's too British. She's not British. She has a different kind of accent. Thank you for the hydrate tech. I appreciate it. Take some water. Your throat's getting scratchy. Oh, is it? Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Good stretch. Thank you for the stretch too, Tech. Not a candle's chance in a rainstorm. Something like that. Not a candle's chance in a rainstorm. Sorry, give me one moment to try to figure out this accent. Not a candle's chance in a rainstorm. Not a snowball's chance in a heaven. Not a snowball's chance in a heaven. Okay, let's try this again. And the script's in the doorframe. I'll be leaving soon to go eat. Won't put up the lurk notice so it doesn't disturb the reading. No, you're good to put up the lurk notice if you'd like. I'll just read through it. Lyndon nodded. With a sigh of steel, she drew her sword. It shone in the white light, red, steady and straight. He thought she was going to explain her plan, but without even opening her mouth, she whipped her blade forward. Colorless light rippled out of her sword, as though her cut moved forward of its own volition through the air. It was so thin it was practically invisible, like a half loop of fishing line sliding forward. It sank into the middle of the door and vanished with no apparent effect. Yaren's sword was already sheathed, though Lyndon hadn't seen it, and she strode forward. I've seen these scripts before. You break them before they trigger, and they don't bother you. With that, she pushed on the door. The left half swung inward, having been split cleanly down the middle by her sword madra. The side with the lock was still attached, but the side with the hinges was now separated. It slid open easily and soundlessly. As Lyndon followed her inside, he looked down at the script on the floor. One of the runes was cracked in two, as the door had been. Unless the rune was broken instantly, breaking this type of script would trigger it. He couldn't imagine the sort of speed, the degree of control it would take to do something like this to a script 6 inches away, much less from a distance. He hungered for such skill. If Suriel's promise held true, he would have the opportunity to learn sacred arts like this, power even the way Patriarch could never imagine. Is that something you could teach me? He asked. He assumed she would laugh at him, but she turned to face him properly without the trace of a smile. A disciple is not worthy to take a disciple. If she was only a student, how could anyone call themselves a master? You're the strongest anyone. You're the strong. You're stronger than anyone I've ever seen. If you stayed here, you could open up a fifth school. This time Yeren did laugh, but not at him. Liquid Valley is too soft. Only storms turn fish into dragons, and there are no storms here. She turned to the treasures held behind their display cases before adding, If you didn't know that yourself, you wouldn't be leaving. That was true enough. Fill your eyes with this, Yeren exclaimed, moving past him. Bud of a star lotus. It's a miracle before copper, but it'll do wonders for anyone's Madra base. Where's your pack? She stared at the spirit fruit with a hungry look, holding a hand over it just as she wanted I, holding a hand over it as though she wanted to reach straight through the forged glass, just as Lyndon had done before. He was going to politely offer her his pack, but she'd already moved on to another display. A Sylvan River seed. That's a gem and a half. Even if we can't use it, we can sell it. She put a hand on her sword. Lyndon considered warning her, but he'd told her about the security measures before. Ram had forged these cases himself, and he would have countermeasures in case one was broken. But he told her that already, and he had to trust she knew what she was doing. In one smooth motion, Yaren drew her sword and sheathed it again. The case split in half. A gong sounded, filling the lesser treasure hall and echoing alarms. Runes in the corners flared ominously red. Two constructs rose through the floor, head-sized eggs of shining gold. Plates on the bottom rotated, spilling blue light, keeping the constructs aloft. Those would be made out of different types of madra, but everything else would be heaven's glory, serving as both power source and physical material. Light coalesced on the tip of the eggs, and Yaren shot him a sheepish look. Sorry. Sorry. I warned you. Yeah, that one's on my account. Yeah, that one's on my account. I said there would be alarms on the cases. Don't break the cases, I said. Next time, I'll give you a shout first. The constructs were focused on Yaren, so Lyndon was backing away, glancing from case to case in search of something that might save them. Why would there be a next time? A door in the back swung open, revealing a shadowed set of stairs, and Elder Ram entered the room. They must have disturbed his sleep, because he only wore a shapeless white robe. He didn't even have on a badge. His hunched, aged figure leaned on a cane in one hand and held a slender sword in the other. The sword didn't tremble at all. If you think you're getting another chance, you've underestimated me, Ram said. He shot Lyndon a glance. I thought I told you not... Nope. I thought I told you not to steal from me. This one regrets it already, Honored Elder, Lyndon said, pressing his fists together in a salute. Manners couldn't save him now, but they couldn't hurt. He'll have friends coming, Yeren said. Thank you for the lick, Tech. I appreciate it. Yeren said, one hand on her sword and her eyes on the constructs. She hadn't even looked at Elder Rom. Grab the prize, then stuff your pockets while I bury the old man. You don't have to bury him, Lyndon hedged. He's treated me well. She didn't loosen the grip on her sword. If he lives, I won't finish him off. That's the best I can promise you. 'Cause I'm not leaving without a fight. The constructs still hadn't attacked, which meant they were primarily designed to contain thieves, while Rom could deal with them personally. But they wouldn't remain so passive if Rom gave the order to attack, or if Yeren showed herself as a threat. Lyndon looked from the constructs to Yeren. You want to fight? I want to clean this place out. Her razor-straight hair shook as she turned to look at him, punctuating her words with a grave look. Sacred arts cost a bundle. Go now. Lyndon didn't need to be told again. The priority was the spirit seal, of course, but how could he pass up a room full of sacred artifacts? Yeren obviously agreed, because when the first construct blasted out a stream of golden light, she reflected it with her sword into another case. Shearing the top off the glass without touching the artifact inside. The second construct fired, and she moved so that it wouldn't pierce the case behind her. She was fighting a Heaven's Glory Elder and his two security constructs, and she intended to do so without damaging any of the treasures around her. And judging by her words, she had complete confidence. One day, Lyndon hoped to be more like Yeren. A plane of glass condensed from light behind her, boxing her in, as Elder Rom joined the fight. Lyndon left them to it. He couldn't fight, so the least he could do was focus on the task. It was hard to concentrate with the sounds of battle behind him, but he knew he had only seconds until someone arrived to back Rom up. He had to work smart. He needed something to break the cases as fast as possible, and something to speed up their escape later. First, to break the glass, he ran to the racks at the side of the room where half-silver weapons were displayed on open shelves. They were comparatively less valuable than the other artifacts in the room, so they didn't rate the case. Lyndon snatched a half-silver dagger away. It looked like ordinary silver, but veins of some brighter mineral shimmered beneath the surface, as though the blade contained a constellation. It would shear through Madra faster than through. Geez. It would shear through Madra faster than through half-melted butter. Still, he didn't rush straight for the spirit seals. He ran to the back of the room, where Rom had shown him a rust-covered cloud. The 1,000-mile cloud filled its case, like a bloody mist. It shattered the glass directly, which... Wait. I missed that. And Lyndon's half-silver dagger worked even better than he'd hoped. It shattered the glass directly, which released a wave of heat. The glass had golden edges, and it must be crystallized Heaven's Glory Madra. The striker technique released a lance of focused golden light, so their forgers must create the glass with burning shards. That seemed useless, except perhaps in constructs. Out of confinement, the cloud inflated to its full size. It was round and fairly large, about 3 feet in diameter, and dense enough that he couldn't see through it. It didn't look solid enough to support solid matter, but he'd grown up with a mattress stuffed with cloud mantra. He pressed on it. It was like pushing into a pillow. It only gave to a certain point, and then it was solid. This would be their getaway. A deadly gold beam flashed by his head for an instant, 5 feet away, but still close enough that he could feel the heat, and he dropped into a crouch. um, Madra trickled from him into the 1,000-mile cloud, and it drifted forward according to his direction. He vaguely remembered where the spirit seals were, the collection of paper seals painted with scripts that would help bind and manipulate remnants. He half crawled through the aisles, circling around the outside of the room to avoid the slashing sword force and the deadly light flashing overhead. Jeez, this is a long chapter. There are still quite a bit of pages left. I think 8 total. As he did, he helped himself to the treasure of heaven's glory. Even the danger of the fight around him couldn't mute that thrill. In his most daring daydreams, he would never have imagined that he could one day choose freely from the vaults of a prestigious school of sacred arts. A smile crept onto his face as lethal Madra flashed over his head. With resources like this, even an Unsouled could rise. He glanced at everything he grabbed before he stuffed it into his pack. First, he snatched the folded white star lotus bud and the tank containing the sylvan river seed. The little blue spirit inside darted around its tree, standing on top of its tiny hill to glance at him. Curiously, the parasite ring went into his pocket, as he wanted to keep that on his person in case he had to abandon everything else. Only then did he reach the spirit seals. The dagger destroyed the case with ease, and Lyndon reached up to snatch a heavy sheaf of palm-sized paper seals, stacked like a deck of cards and tied at the top. Each seal was covered in layers of profound brushstrokes, forming scripts according to principles he couldn't begin to grasp. He slid over to the display containing the flying sword, which had caught his eye before. Once he reached iron, he could use it, and now that he would be traveling with Yaren, it was even more valuable. A sword artist like her would be able to work miracles with such a weapon. No sooner had he broken the case than Yaren came sliding down the aisle on her back, as though tossed there by a heavy blow. Her sword was still held in front of her, and the edge of her hair was smoking. "This is taking a notch longer than I thought." Lyndon risked a glance outside. Sure enough, a small crowd of disciples had gathered at the bottom of the steps. Sorry, give me one moment. Okay. They were murmuring among themselves at the moment, but they could rush forward to assist Elder Rom at any second. He looked down the aisle at dozens of cases he hadn't broken, and spoke through gritted teeth. "Let's just take what we have." It grated on him to leave so many riches behind, but they'd die if they stayed. She grimaced and rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding another beam. "Once I ease him on his way, we can go." While she struck out At the construct with another ripple of sword madra, he stared at her. We don't need to fight him at all. Get on the cloud and let's go. The strong don't run, she said. The elder himself stepped into view at that moment, waving his sword. Madra followed the motion, and transparent Madra walls bloomed to either side of them. They were trapped in a column. One row of artifacts with Rom and his two constructs on one side, and Yaren and Linden on the other. Behind them, a group of enemy disciples waited out the open door. The old man pointed his blade at them. He must have given the constructs an instruction, because they were both silent as he spoke. We want you alive. Swear yourself to my keeping, give us answers, and we won't kill you. We'll allow you to take your own life. Can you keep me alive? Lyndon asked, voice low. Because you might survive that crowd rushing in here, but I won't. And you swore to keep me safe. She shuddered, expression flickering between anger and agony. But eventually, she nodded. Yaren knelt next to the case with the flying sword, her own blade pressed against the ground. She had lost her Heaven's Glory robes at some point, leaving her own tattered black ones. Though the stolen iron badge still hung around her neck. Did your messenger tell you what path I follow? Suriel's ghost had given him that information, but he couldn't remember. He shook his head. Grab the sword, she said, pointing at the case. Then throw it at him. Lyndon glanced nervously at the battle-ready jade. Now? Now! The elder faced them impatiently, constructs hovering over each shoulder and weapon in hand. With as little movement as possible, Lyndon slid the scripted blade off of its stand. Your answer? Rum demanded. Lyndon hefted the blade. Yaren took a deep breath. This is the path of the endless sword, she said. Lyndon threw. As the sword tumbled end over end in the air, Yaren tightened her grip on her own weapon. Her blade rang like a struck bell, and suddenly the air was filled with flying splinters, as the floor tore itself to pieces. It was as though 1,000 hatchets struck at the same point at the same time. The display of half-silver weaponry echoed the sound weakly, and a few cuts appeared around their case, but they remained intact. Even the half-silver dagger at Lyndon's belt rang softly, and he jerked as light cuts appeared on his robe. Around the room, 3 bells rang louder, and 3 cases burst. Another bell, and Ram screamed. His sword had rung in sympathy with the others, and his sleeve exploded in blood. His arm and the right side of his clothes had been slashed to tatters, and his weapon fell to the ground from a hand that no longer had the strength to hold it. In the air, the flying sword rang as well. Barely visible lines of sword madra reflected from its edge as it flew between the Heaven's Glory constructs. They were still quiet, having been pacified by Elder Rom. And so they did not protest. Hold on. And so they did not protest as they were sliced to pieces that trailed golden smoke as they drifted to the ground. Only the blue circles on the bottoms remained floating, supporting nothing. The sword finished its arc and clattered to the ground, nowhere close to Elder Rom. The old man moaned as he fell to his knees, clutching his ruined arm. Lyndon stared. Yaren pushed him towards the 1,000-mile cloud and the stuffed pack on top, still talking. That's called residence. Uses sword Madra to rile up the aura in the air, which gathers around sharp weapons. Doesn't work so well with half silver. For that, Lyndon was grateful. Otherwise, he might have been split in two by his own dagger. He sprawled onto the cloud, pushing down the pack full of loot with his body. She hopped on in front of him, feeding her spirit into the cloud construct. It was off like an arrow, shooting. Wait, what the? Shooting through the door and away before any of the stunned Heaven's Glory disciples could react. That's the heart of my path, Darren said. All swords are one. While she spoke, she steered the cloud down the street. It only hovered about 3 feet over the ground, but under the influence of Yaren's powerful spirit, it was faster than a galloping horse. I will do anything, if you can teach me to do that. Streaks of light blasted after them, scorching rainstone buildings as Yaren navigated them away from the school. Her scarred face was tight with concentration. He's not dead, she said, ignoring his comment. Ignoring his comment. But I'd contend that I won. She nodded decisively. Yeah, we'll mark that one up as a win. They streaked towards the ancestor's tomb, leaving their pursuers far behind. Now, before I start chapter 19, I'm going to take a quick little break to go and refill my water, and I also need to blow my nose. Yep, I will be right back. Quick break. All right, I'm back. Hi, Jade. Welcome back. Welcome in. Welcome in. Um, you're finally out of CNA class, so I can watch now. That's awesome. And thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. 6 months already. That's crazy. But I think if you type in chat, you should see something pretty cool. But yeah, welcome in, Jade. How's it going? How's it going? Also, I think. Oh, yeah, that still hasn't been gotten. Oh my gosh. Oh, wait, why can't you see it? What the heck? I'm doing good. What the. What the. You can't see it? Oh, man. If you go into your identity, you might be able to see it there. Okay. Well, yeah, so my day's going good. As my announcement said in the Discord, I accidentally overslept and went through when I was supposed to start streaming. Oops. But yeah, we're on chapter 19 now, which leaves 2 chapters and the epilogue and the bloopers, which I'm excited for. Okay. We just finished chapter 18. It's not showing up. I can see yours. Let me close stream and open it again. Also, it's good that you got sleep. Yeah. I kind of didn't go to sleep until like 1 in the morning, but then I slept until like almost 1. I slept until like 1 in the afternoon. So I got like 12 hours of sleep. But yeah, it's really good to see you, Jade. I'm glad you're here. Um, yeah. Okay. Chapter 19. As the sun rose, Linden and Yaren flew over the rough terrain of Mount Samara. Yaren kept the rosy clouds skimming the rocks, scattering snow as they blasted north towards the ancestor's tomb. Meanwhile, Linden concentrated on not falling asleep. Once he had found a position that he felt he could survive, he slowly began. Wait, falling asleep was not. That's not what that said. Falling off. Meanwhile, Linden concentrated on not falling off. Once he had found a position that he felt he could survive, he slowly began picking through his pack of stolen items. Once they landed, they might not have time to take full inventory. The 1,000-mile cloud itself was probably their greatest prize, and Yaren insisted that even Linden's Madra was enough to power it, though he would travel much more slowly. According to her, clouds like this were valuable transportation beyond the valley. There were 48 spirit seals in the stack, and they were prepared to use all of them on her master's remnant. But if they had a few left over, the seals would be a precious advantage against other remnants in the future. Still, it was best to not count on that. The Sword Sage was their priority. The Star Lotus Bud would help him break through to copper almost immediately, and he had to remind himself more than a dozen times that it would be foolish to eat it now. The ancestral orris fruit had taken him days to digest, and the Star Lotus should take even longer. The last thing he needed was something in his own core distracting him when he might need to fight. Even so, he longed to swallow at least one petal. Instead, he occupied himself watching the Sylvan River seed. Thank you for the hydrating stretch, Rain. I'm going to finish this paragraph and then I'll do that. The little blue flame spirit that danced around in its glass enclosure. The river that spun around the inside of the little tank had remained steady as they flew, neither spilling nor splashing, but the spirit had thrown itself against the glass walls to stare at the passing landscape. Lyndon had asked what the river seed could be used for, but Yeren herself was unclear. Oh, I was supposed to read hydrate and stretch after the paragraph, and I kept going. Oopsies. Good stretch. Thank you, Rain. I appreciate you. They were rare, she knew that, and you were supposed to raise them, or maybe plant them. Either way, she was certain it was worth more money than anything else they'd snatched, including the cloud. Rain is an amazing cloud. The parasite ring was like the Star Lotus bud, in that it would eventually help Lyndon overcome his deficiencies, but wasn't a waste of any immediate use. Oh, but wasn't of any immediate use. He added to that the half-silver dagger. His parents had owned a few half-silver weapons, but he'd never had one of his own. And the White Fox boundary flags, at least a value... Geez, I need to, figure out what's going wrong with my reading. Let's restart that portion. His parents had owned a few half-silver weapons, but he'd never had one of his own. And the White Fox boundary flags as the least valuable treasure they'd stolen. The boundary was difficult to obtain, but it also took a long time to set up, and a powerful enough opponent would simply tear through it. He had been lucky to use it against Kazan Madaret. 7 treasures. They were an unspeakable fortune to a Wei clan Unsouled. But looking at them like this, they were almost disappointing. When he compared them to what they could have gotten away with, had they been allowed just another minute in the treasure hall. Dragon fever, Yeren said from the front of the cloud. Lyndon jerked up, startled out of his daydreams. Dragon? She laughed into the wind as they skipped off of an outcropping, floated down to land above the ground again. That's what my master would say. Sacred arts are expensive, and it takes a pile of pills and treasures to advance. It's when you get lost in gold for its own sake. That's the dragon fever. Lyndon's face heated. She'd seen through him without even looking at him. I'm not trying to take your share. My contributions... Oh wait, that's the wrong person. This is Lyndon. I'm not trying to take your share. My contributions pale beside yours, but some of them I think might not suit someone of your strength. No, don't get me wrong. I'm burning up with the fever. I'm just boiling. I'm just boiling to turn around and scrape that treasure haul clean. He exhaled, relieved. This is a bigger fortune than I've ever seen, and for some reason I'm disappointed it isn't bigger. Dragon fever, she said decisively, helps to keep your eyes fixed on one thing. Grab whatever else you can, but don't go blind to what really matters. My master says. She stopped, wind whistling by. My master used to say, distraction kills more secret artists than enemies ever do. He couldn't he couldn't ignore the pause. Having never been trained, he never had a master. But how would he feel if his parents had been taken from him? Suriel's vision flashed through his head. Sacred Valley blasted out of existence, and he spoke with real sympathy. He must have been a great man, even in the outside world. The spine of the matter is, he only came to the valley for me, she said. He couldn't see her face, but suddenly he could barely hear her words over the wind. Wouldn't have bothered coming on his own. It was just a safe place for me to train. But it doesn't matter how strong you are when you're poisoned in your sleep. By the end, her voice carried the ring of cold steel. I wish I could have met him, Lyndon said. It was true, but it was also what he was supposed to say to a grieving relative. He might have taken you with us if you had asked him. He could be soft that way. But first, he'd have killed your clan elders for what they were teaching you. Lyndon leaned around her shoulder, trying to catch a glimpse of her expression. Forgiveness, but what did they teach me? He crashed into her back as the cloud came to a sudden halt. A massive square building loomed in the distance, set with huge columns and a stone mural of 4 beasts locked in battle. The whole edifice lurked on the edge of an enormous cliff, as though it had done so since the beginning of time. The ancestor's tomb, Yaren said, and vaulted down from the cloud. Master went to the Heaven's Glory in particular just for this. They say it leads down into some labyrinth where even my master couldn't step easy. Her hand was on her sword, black sacred artist robes trailing edges in the wind. She pulled the stolen badge over her head and tossed it to one side. They poisoned him and they stabbed him, so he tried to hide in the tomb. Died 2 steps from the door. She looked back at him, but her scarred face wasn't as cold as he'd imagined. From someone seeking revenge, it was etched with grief. Last thing he said to me, he told me to finish forming my path. He didn't know he'd be leaving me his own remnant, but he did. Nobody else touches his spirit but me, and that's the fact of it. Lyndon surveyed the giant tomb. 2 guards had revealed themselves on the front steps, and they would certainly have seen the 1,000-mile cloud by now. One of them raised a hand, sending a flash of golden light streaking into the air. A signal. There's not so much I can do. Oh, wait. There's not so much I can do in a straight fight, Lyndon said honestly, but I'll help you wherever I can. Yaren patted him on the shoulder. Yeah, I'm convinced that you will. You've got less choice than a tethered ox. He cleared his throat. I would have helped you without the oath. There's a chance you would, but now you won't give up midstream and beg for your life. Lyndon prickled at that. There's no reason for that. I may be weak, but I'm not a coward. She rolled her arm in its socket, loosening it up for a fight, and she grinned at him over her shoulder. Couldn't know that when I made you swear, could I? I trust you more now. A notch more. Hi, Santi. Welcome in. Welcome in. You're not too late in. We're a couple pages into chapter 19. But yeah, welcome in. How's it going, bud? At least she hadn't set another trap for him. He sighed and began sorting the Heaven's Glory artifacts into different pockets. He jammed them all into his pack without looking, but now he might need to draw them quickly. Oh, my nose is itchy. Itchy nose. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. One of the guards activated an egg-shaped golden construct that looked the same as the one Rom had used, and the other was beginning to set up walls of gold-tinged glass. Now, Weishi Linden, we live or die together. Yeren took off in an explosion of snow, blasting forward with a speed only an iron body could achieve. You got your streak. That's good. Glad. Should be 11. I do not have a lot of data. That's fair. As she shattered the first wall of glass, sending a hot wind billowing out as the glass broke, Lyndon took his time packing up the treasures. He couldn't help until the fight was over, and he wouldn't run headlong into death. So I'll leave for now. See ya. Okay, have a good rest of your time, Santi. Maybe we'll see you later before I end stream, and before the book is over. If the heavens considered that a violation of his word, so be it. The 1,000-mile cloud wouldn't compress, and he determined that it required a special case to fold up. Since he didn't have one, he fed it a trickle of his madra and dragged it along behind him as he picked his way across the frozen boulders and towards Yeren. It followed like an obedient bird. Light burned a river of steam into the snow, and a wall of glass appeared to block Yeren's counterattack. She was steadily advancing, but the two guards and the construct were using every trick at their disposal to keep her at bay. When she flipped in midair to avoid two golden beams, and then sliced a 15-foot glass wall from top to bottom with sword madra, Lyndon knew it was only a matter of time before she closed the gap. He knew what would happen when she did. He kept an eye on the battle as he advanced, but by the time he reached the bottom step of the ancestor's tomb, with his cloud in tow, Yeren was flanked by two bleeding bodies and fizzing golden plates that had once been a Heaven's Glory construct. Are they dead? Lyndon asked. He wasn't sure why. It didn't matter to him if Heaven's Glory lost two more fighters. Yeren cleaned her blade on the snow, then wiped it dry on the corner of her robe. Iron bodies are tougher than snake leather. The man's not long for breathing, but I didn't want to stare down more remnants than I have to. The woman might hang on until their school gets here. She passed out from the pain. He picked around the bloody snow, following Yaren up the stairs. Sacred artists are supposed to be beyond pain. No one's beyond pain, she said, and then she stood before a tall door. It looked like wood, but it carried the eternal aura of solid rock. From within, a sound rang out like steel on stone. The note hung in the air, endless and pure. Seals? She asked, adjusting her rope belt. Lyndon held up the stack. Let me hear your roll, she ordered. But Lyndon didn't take offense. She was stronger than any of the Jades in Sacred Valley, and she had more right than anyone to order him around, even if she was barely older than he was. I'm putting the seals into a circle in front of the door, he said. While you lure it out, I throw a seal directly at it and run while you fight it here. where the seals on the ground can help you. If that's not enough, I can come back and seal it again." She eyed him. "If you thought I told you to run, you heard wrong." "I have to run to set these up," Lyndon said, revealing an inch of purple banner. "I'm not even running. I'm providing strategic support. Now, you have your ward key?" "Remnants will tear through that like a bull through a paper door." "If he's tearing through this, he's not tearing through you." The air of tension around her was lifting, which was a good thing as far as Lyndon was concerned. She'd been talking like someone on her way to the grave, and if she died, he wouldn't be far behind. Now he saw the distant shadow of a smile on her face, and she turned as though to respond. The door tore in half with a sound of screaming metal. He registered nothing beyond sudden light and agonizing noise before something hit him in the chest and he tumbled backward down the steps, slamming onto his back at the bottom. His body hadn't had a chance to recover since the last time he'd jammed his full pack into his spine, and he indulged in an instance of self-pity, imagining his rare boundary flag snapping in half. Then the reality crashed in. That door had split in two from the inside. The impact on his chest was Yeren pushing him back faster than he could react, or he would be lying at the top of the steps in two pieces. The remnant of an expert beyond gold, the spirit that they assumed was sealed inside the ancient tomb, had cut through its restraints like an axe through a spiderweb. It hadn't been sealed. It had been waiting. He pushed his battered body to his feet, taking quick stock to make sure nothing was broken or bleeding. Then he saw the remnant of the sword sage. It was a mass of rippling liquid steel in the shape of a human, as though someone had poured a mirror over a man. Its face was featureless, blank, polished to a flawless reflection. It had no arms or legs, merely an uninterrupted sheet of metal, and it flowed over the ground like a snail. The remnant was far more solid, more real than any forged constructs Lyndon had ever seen. The only parts he recognized as Madra were all three hoops crisscrossing its chest, one a loop of vivid white color, one scarlet, and one inky black. The circle spun in rapid orbit around the sword remnant's chest as it surveyed the scene in its smooth face. It reflected the two bodies that it reflected the two bodies, and Lyndon slowly edging backward before its gaze rested on Yeren. There, it stopped. The disciple faced her master's ghost with sword bare. She was a mundane echo of the remnant. Its red ring was her belt, its black ring her tattered robes, its white ring her pale scars, and its chrome her shining blade. "Disciple greets her master," she said quietly. A student in her place would normally have saluted respectfully, but she kept her eyes on the spirit. For a long breath, the remnant remained quiet, powerful enough spirits could speak, and there was no doubt that this was the most potent he'd ever seen. It would talk soon, and the reunion of master and disciple would give him time to set the boundary. The remnant had crashed through the door before he could lay seals, but he'd watch for a chance to hit it directly with one. 6 limbs of liquid metal sprouted from the remnant's back, flattening and sharpening until it stood under a halo of blades. It still didn't speak. This is getting really good, right? Isn't it? Wait, where did that come from? Did I miss something? Did I miss a cheer? Because you have a cheer badge. Oh, no, you've cheered in the past. That's right. That makes sense. But yeah, this is getting really good. I'm excited. Without a word, it attacked. I just figured out how to put it on the. Oh, that makes sense. The remnant's main body stood like a statue, but its blades were invisible as they whispered forward. Yeren moved in response, and weapons crashed in an explosion that sent sharp ripples in every direction. The stairs under them cracked, shards of stone blasting into the air, and gashes appeared in the thick pillars. Snow split as though invisible giants hacked away at the ground with hatchets, and a nearby boulder slid into 2 pieces. Lyndon hopped onto the 1,000-mile cloud and fed it all the matter he could. He hadn't seen a single meeting of blades, but he heard them all, filling the mountainside in one seemingly constant note. Whatever Yeren might believe, he would never be able to approach the remnant like this. He'd never seen the cut. He'd never seen the cut that killed him. He'd never see the cut that killed him. He could only hope that she would wound it badly enough that it would lose some of its substance. Without a supply of external energy, it wouldn't recover, so it would get weaker as the fight progressed. But then, so would Yeren. A spray of blood told him that the unconscious Heaven's Glory guards hadn't made it after all. The 2 remnants rose from the corpses, one string puppet of burning gold lines, and one a skeleton of yellow-tinged glass. They hadn't even straightened to their full height when more invisible blades minced them to chunks. We don't have time for this, Lyndon thought, as he fled as fast as his cloud would carry him. They needed to end this fight before Heaven's Glory showed themselves. But he couldn't get close enough to set up the barrier. She had already demonstrated her endless sword technique. With 2 experts using it, they might have been surrounded by hundreds of whirling invisible blades. To pass close enough to plant a flag would be to risk death. And if he reached the remnant with the seal, he'd be shredded. He glanced behind, in case the battle might have crept closer to him, and from further back, he could see something he hadn't noticed before. There was a small wooden hut sheltered in the shadow of the tomb, and a child in white robes was peeking around the corner at the battle. The child raised his arms, and golden light lanced towards the fight. Lyndon's heart stopped. Elder Whitehall. Something deflected the beam, sending it arching into the sky, but neither girl nor remnant could spare the attention to deal with the intruder. He was the vulture, waiting for the wolf and the tiger to kill each other so it could feast on both corpses. He would never let Lyndon approach with the seals. The freezing mountaintop wind felt very close. Whitehall hadn't noticed him yet, but he had a chance here. A chance to at least stall the Elder and give Yeren a chance. But he had no time. Whitehall could notice him any second. He had to act now. He removed the glass ball with its azure flame, rolling it in his hand. If Suriel looked, what would she see in his fate now? Before he could think himself away, Lyndon leaped onto the red cloud and sped out in a wide arc. He couldn't move nearly as fast as Yaren could, but it was enough. He circled behind Elder Whitehall. Then, still scraping the back of his brain for ideas, he charged. In the eyes of a jade, the fight between the girl and the remnant was nothing short of spectacular. An ocean of silver sword aura gathered around them, rolling like a sea in storms. Even to Whitehall, their blows moved at a speed that he could barely catch. The disciple in black gathered aura with every motion, which condensed around her blade in a steadily increasing silver glow. She leapt, ducked, slid, and dodged, her weapon never pausing, meeting every strike from the six-bladed remnant with her own sword or a blast of razor-edged Madra. Whitehall knew some peers of the Golden Sword School that would have sacrificed 3 fingers for a glimpse at this fight. This was a sword aspect path taken beyond anything in Sacred Valley, beyond what anyone could conceive. He drew Heaven's Glory energy from his core, focusing it according to the Heaven's Lance technique. The energy struck out in a line of light and heat, scoring the floor between the two fighters. The girl faltered, taking a narrow slash across the cheek as the glow around her sword flickered. Even the remnant slid slightly to the left. Whitehall might not have been able to kill either of them on his own, but sparrows did not bring down hawks by attacking head-on. They nipped and circled until the larger bird collapsed from exhaustion and fell from the sky. Then the treasure of the sword sage, relics of a world beyond this valley, would be his. Not only might he restore his body, he could become the first gold since the founding of the Heaven's Glory School. He'd leveled another golden lance when something slammed into him from behind. A thorn of pain blossomed in his shoulder as he pitched forward, and the lance of light flew wild, scorching the surface of the ancestor's tomb. But it didn't last as long as it should have, guttering out like a candle as the Madra in Whitehall's body went wild. He landed face first in the snow, his insides twisting as though his intestines had tried to coil up and escape through his mouth. His spirit burned with and writhed in chaos, searing him from the inside out, and he coughed a mouthful of blood onto the ground. Whitehall... Oh, wait. With one hand, he reached up and pulled the spike out of his shoulder. It glittered in the morning sunlight, a half-silver dagger. Whitehall turned in a fury, bloody dagger in his hand. His body was still iron and his spirit jade. He would recover in minutes. His attacker had done nothing but earn a quick death. Wei Shi Linden loomed overhead, and though his spirit made him weak, he had the body of a strong man. Even the huge pack on his back lent an intimidating cast to his silhouette. Whitehall hesitated for a mere instant of purely instinctive fear. The gut reaction of a child facing down an angry adult. His mind was still that of an expert, but there was something primal about looking up to a human being twice his size. During that half second of vulnerability, Linden pivoted and planted a fist in Whitehall's gut. The impact didn't do much. Despite his advantage in weight, Linden still hadn't reached iron, so Whitehall had the absolute lead in strength. But pure Madra leaked into Whitehall's core from outside. His training took over, and he cycled Madra defensively, but he might as well have saved his effort. Nothing happened. Whitehall couldn't deny a small measure of relief. The Unsouled might as well have tried to put out a forest fire with a splash of water. He grabbed the young man's wrist in an iron grip, locking him in place, and took a moment to savor the sudden look of fear on Lyndon's face. Then he struck back. Lyndon was actually grateful for his experience at the 7-year festival. Without all that practice fighting 8-year-olds, he would never have been able to accurately strike Whitehall's core. Not that it mattered in the end. He'd counted on the disruption from the half-silver dagger lasting long enough to let him land an empty palm, which would have bought him enough time to run. Whitehall would have recovered in seconds and chased him, but he'd planned for that. He hadn't planned for the elder grabbing him by the wrist. He tried to resist, but it was as though his arm had been planted in stone. Panic bloomed in his chest, and he had time for only one panicked thought. Too fast. He'd shaken off the half-silver in an instant. Lyndon had never had a chance. Whitehall smiled, his lips bloody, and the expression looked demonic in a child's face. Then he turned around without releasing his grip. At the last second, Lyndon realized what was about to happen. He slipped his free hand inside his outer robes and gripping the stack of spirit seals. He didn't even have time for fear before he was launched into the air. The elder hurled Lyndon toward the fight. As he tumbled forward, he came into absolute focus. Though the flight must have taken a second, it felt like minutes. The remnant's 6-bladed limbs flashed. Yaren's sword wove a defensive tapestry, and around them the stone was sliced to pieces. With one clumsy effort, he flung the entire pack of spirit seals into the remnant's general location. They would most likely be cut into pieces midair, and even if they landed, they had a better chance of slapping harmlessly into the ground than touching the remnant. He needed something else. He could still feel his spirit's connection to the 1,000-mile cloud, so he poured Madra into it desperately, clutching at anything that might save him. It would never reach him before he plunged into that deadly whirlwind, but he had to try. When Yaren saw him, her eyes widened, then narrowed on the falling seals. She didn't hesitate. Her defensive stance collapsed, and blood instantly sprayed up from her body in 5 lines as she took the remnant's attacks. Her sword gathered force like a heat haze, and as she sliced from bottom to top, a wave of colorless power tore out from her weapon. The Madra struck the remnant head on, slashing a vertical gash in its pristine surface and knocking it back a few paces into the falling seals. It shuddered as the scripted papers sank into its body, causing the forged Madra that had made up its form to ripple like a slapped puddle. The rest of Yaren's slash whipped through the open door of the tomb, dragging a line of destruction across the tiles and blasting a man-sized tear in the interior wall. Stone crumbled away from the triangular hole the size of a doorway, and he caught a glimpse of the mountains behind the tomb before his thoughts caught up. They had won. He fell anyway. Instead of slamming into the edge of a sword or the ragged corner of torn stone, he fell into a red cloud hovering 3 feet above the ground. It caught him on the right side of his body, flipping him over, and yet Lyndon landed hard on his back. The impact to his skull sent stars shooting through darkness, and he was sure something in his pack must have broken this time. But he lived. The battle resumed overhead, blades of invisible force whistling as they sliced through the air over his face. Covered in blood, Yaren forced the remnant back, step by step. It was leaking silvery motes of essence now, and the battle slid steadily away from the door. As it did, Lyndon maintained his spirit's grip on the thousand-mile cloud. Weakened or not, the remnant's attacks were still enough to kill him, and he wanted to put as much space between them as he could. With one hand on the construct for support, he half crawled, half limped into the ancestor's tomb. There, he would be safe from the fight. There, he could think. He had just pulled his feet in past the doorway when a line of gold heat blasted after him, missing him by inches. Part of his mind was still moving, taking stock of his options, but the rest of him was shivering terror. When Whitehall appeared in the doorway, a child in blood-stained white robes, Lyndon whimpered. The elder took a step inside, glancing from side to side as though checking to see what other trick Lyndon had prepared. That sight was like dawn rising before Lyndon's eyes. Elder Whitehall, a jade leader of the esteemed Heaven's Glory School, was wary of him. Lyndon straightened and rose to his feet, though he needed to lean on the thousand-mile cloud to do so. Wind whistled between the open door and the gash in the side, whipping against his skin like ice. But he ostentatiously ignored Elder Whitehall and looked to the walls and ceiling as though checking on his traps. The inside of the ancestor's tomb was vast and empty, set with as many pillars on the inside as there were on the outside, and the ceiling was covered in another mural of 4 beasts: a blue serpentine dragon on a thunderstorm, a crowned white tiger, a stone warrior with the shell of a tortoise, and a blazing red phoenix. In the back of the room was an ornate door, presumably leading to the actual tomb, because there were no bodies here. Or perhaps that was the entrance to the labyrinth Yaren had mentioned. Whitehall brandished the half-silver dagger in his hand. I'm not a fool. Never think that I am. I've caught on to you. You're no Unsouled. Lyndon focused on catching his breath and tried to not betray himself. Unsouled do not have the Madra to use a thousand-mile cloud. Without the ancestral Orris fruit, he would never have been able to activate the cloud, or the white fox boundary. Now that he thought of it, that fruit had saved his life more than once. Unsouled do not win tournaments, not even among children. Without the empty palm, he never would have. Unsouled do not beat irons with or without tricks. Whitehall had actually seen the Hornet remnants defeat a mom. All Lyndon had needed was the strength to open a scripted jar, and the elder had to know that. The jade in the boy's body toyed with the half-silver dagger, studying him. I believed you must have cheated to pass the trial of glorious ascension, but now I understand. Anyone can put on a wooden badge. What are you really? Iron? You're not a copper. A copper body would have died by now, and a jade wouldn't throw away his pride. Apologies, Elder, Lyndon said respectfully. This one is honored by the attention, but the elder surely has bigger problems than his humble disciple. Whitehall nodded slowly. I will soon. Dropping seals on a remnant in mid-air while calling a cloud? Those are not the reflexes of a copper. This time, Lyndon did allow himself a small smile. He was proud of that one. Whoever you are, you're traveling a fool's path. Then Whitehall did something that Lyndon hadn't predicted. He flipped the half-silver dagger around, offering Lyndon the hilt. Work with me. Alright, so that was chapter 19. It's getting crazy. Ooh, that was a good stretch. Ooh, that was a really good stretch. I'm gonna run a quick ad break, and then it's gonna go for a minute, and then we start chapter 20. Let's see. But yeah, I can't believe we're already only one chapter away. One chapter away from finishing. One chapter, an epilogue, and bloopers away from finishing. And I plan on reading all of them. Hi, Jadobi. Welcome in. I'm guessing you're in the middle of the ad break? Congratulations on third, mistress. Welcome in, welcome in. How are you doing? How is work? Or if you're off work, that's awesome. I'm guessing you were in the ad. I don't know if you heard me. Oh wait, no, you did. Work was okay. Just waiting for Jess to get out here so I can go home. Oh, okay. I guess that's the benefits of getting off around the same time. But yeah, I'm glad work was okay. It's better than being bad. How's your day been? I'm just taking a quick break from reading for a minute. Good stretch. Pretty fine. Gonna hopefully nap when I get home before stream. Oh, okay. It's board game night, right? Yeah, didn't know what game it'll be, but yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Um, mhm. Okay. Let's see. Drink a little more water, and then I'm gonna start chapter 20. It's the final chapter. I do hope you enjoy stream tonight. It sounds like it'll be fun. I wonder how many pages chapter 20 is. Let's see. 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Oh, wow. It's only 14 pages. Twitch stole my streak? No. Oh, man. I'm so sorry. That's not cool. Anyways, drive time loves you. Loves you, Jadobi. I'm so sorry that your streak is gone. Get home safe, okay? And then take a nap when you get home. Okay. Chapter 20. I have no grudge against. Wait, no. I have no grudge against you, Whitehall said, the expression on his face far colder than anything a child should have produced. I don't even need the girl dead. I just want the treasures of the Sword Sage and nothing more. Here and now, with the heavens as my witness, I'll swear an oath on my soul to leave you both alive. Furthermore, I will take you as my personal disciple. Whatever you are, you're not a jade yet, and in my care, you will be. He held the dagger out in a steady hand, waiting for Lyndon to take the hilt. To win, all Lyndon had to do was delay while Yaren harvested her master's remnant. Forgiveness, Elder, but it seems as though he considered saying this one, but it didn't seem like the time for humble speech. I have no reason to accept. If the remnant is sealed, and I mean no disrespect, but Yaren will destroy you. She's more powerful than any jade in Sacred Valley, Whitehall said frankly, but the battle has weakened her. If I give myself even odds of defeating her. But whether I do or not, I hereby swear on my soul that I will first destroy your core. Unsouled or not, you will be truly crippled then. Lyndon shivered, as though he covered it by adjusting his robe against the cold. Unsouled were considered cripples, but they could still use basic Madra. With his core destroyed, it would be as though he truly had no spirit. He couldn't work with scripts or remnants, and no elixir would save him. Some sacred artists spoke of losing their core as worse than death. He still needed time. Yaren promised to take me beyond the valley, he said slowly. I've been weak for too long, and I won't settle for the mediocre strength we have here. Whitehall's eyes lit up, and his grip on the dagger tightened. Exactly right. That is the heart a sacred artist should have. He waved his hand around them. Even this place is built on foundations deeper than we've ever explored. Our elders stay jade because they're too afraid to risk what they have and dig deeper. I am not. From outside there came a crash, and the sound of metal bent past breaking. Whitehall's expression hardened. Choose now. Join me and rise. We'll leave together, or else I'll cripple you and take my chances against the Sword Disciple. Lyndon prided himself on thinking through his options. He had sworn an oath to Yaren, but he wasn't even copper. Whatever oath the heavens extracted, it wouldn't destroy his core. But though he remained at the foundation stage, there was some iron in him that would not bend. He was not a coward. He would not abandon Yaren to captivity. And more than anything, this is my second life, Lyndon said. He pushed off from the cloud, balancing on his own exhausted feet. Whitehall's eyebrows drew in, but Lyndon didn't care to convince him. It was a gift from the heavens, and I'd rather die than waste it. He shrugged. At least I'll die trying. He stood proudly before Whitehall, tired and weak, his empty hand bared. He had no cards left, no trick to play. There was a certain peace to it. Whitehall's face twisted in disgust, and he tossed the stolen dagger to the ground. Trash! Trash! That was all he said. He covered the distance between them in a single step. His palm strike. Oh, welcome back, Santi. His palm striking Lyndon just below the navel. You have a free hour? Ooh, that's awesome. Well, that whole hour is probably enough for me to finish the book. We're on chapter 20. But yeah, welcome back. I hope you enjoy. And it's good to see ya. In the last instant, in that knife's edge of time during the Elder's attack, Lyndon remembered that he did have one more card after all. The heart of Twin Star's cycling technique had been preparing his core for months now. Chapter 20. This is the final chapter. And then there's the epilogue and bloopers. I'm going to restart the paragraph. The heart of Twin Star's cycling technique had been preparing his core for months now, but he'd always stopped before that final step. Now, as Elder Whitehall injected his burning Madra into Lyndon's core, Lyndon activated the technique. He tore his core in half. The agony was unspeakable, beyond physical, and his screams shook every corner of the ancestor's tomb. Whitehall's energy flooded into his body. The empty palm was only remarkable as a technique because it allowed a sacred artist to affect the enemy on the same level. A jade did not need a technique to destroy the spirit of an Unsouled. He would simply overwhelm the weaker core with power and let it burst under pressure. But if Lyndon's core exploded, he didn't feel it. The agony of tearing it in two blanked everything, washing his world in white. He collapsed to the stone floor, and he welcomed the pain in his body. When he came to, Whitehall had only taken one step to the door. The skin of Lyndon's stomach was scorched where the palm had struck him, but his spirit cycled rapidly on its own, trying to rid itself of the foreign heaven's glory Madra. His veins felt like they were on fire, but even that was a relief next to tearing apart his core. And when he thought of the core, his spiritual sense dipped down to the center of his spirit, where two dim balls of light floated inside him like blue-white stars, weak, but whole and unharmed. After only a blink of thought, he understood why. When the core split, they had moved. Where once he had one in the center of his body, now he had one a half-inch to the left and one a half-inch to the right. Whitehall had missed. Heaven's glory had entered his body, but it had only burned him. He wasn't a crippled, at least no more than he was before. He wasn't any stronger with two cores, of course, and in fact, cycling would likely become twice as difficult in the future. But he had one crucial advantage. Whitehall wasn't watching. No matter how strong a jade spirit made him, he was still in the body of an 8-year-old boy. Summoning the strength from the depth of his spirit, scrounging for every scrap of Madra, Lyndon rose to his feet and lunged. Before Whitehall could react, Lyndon wrapped both hands around a small waist. Then he lifted the Elder into the air. The Elder screamed incoherently as Lyndon staggered over to the wall. A shoe caught him in the nose with a crunch, sending blood streaming into his mouth. Lances of heaven's glory struck the painted ceilings, the pillars, the walls, but none reached Lyndon. A flailing fist hit him in the side of the head, and the world around him spun. He limped forward, hoping he was going in the right direction. When the floor fell out under him, he knew he'd chosen well. They pitched out the hole in the side of the wall that Yeren had accidentally opened. Whitehall tumbled away from him, grasping at the air with one hand as golden light shot from the other. His eyes met Lyndon's, and he looked pitifully like a confused, terrified boy. While Lyndon couldn't deny some anxiety, he'd fallen too many times in the last few days. He'd learned to expect it. This time, he'd planned ahead. He caught himself on the edge of a floating red cloud. It had taken him the very last drop of strength to drag the 1,000-mile cloud along behind him, and when he hauled himself up to its surface, he collapsed in utter weakness. This time, finally, he had absolutely nothing left. No Madra, no strength. Even his eyes were covered by tears, his nose and mouth filled with blood, his ears deafened by rushing wind. He drifted as if in a dream, feeling nothing but pain and gratitude for life. Unguided by his spirit, the cloud drifted slowly toward the ground. Hundreds of feet beneath him, Elder Whitehall's body hit the rocks. He swiped tears from his eyes to get a better look, horrified that the Elder might survive. But then a golden remnant wrenched itself free from the boy's corpse. It was a twisted dwarf, a deformed imp drawn in shining yellow lines. It would be poetic, Lyndon reflected, if I killed a jade just to die at the hands of his remnant. Not all remnants were malicious, but Lyndon had the suspicion that Whitehall's likely would be. It didn't drift away, but sat on its haunches like a frog, watching Lyndon's cloud descend. Here he was, with no options left, waiting to slowly slide into inevitable death. It was not how he had imagined dying, but he hoped the story would make it back to his family. They would be shocked at how far he made it. A weight slammed into the 1,000-mile cloud, bringing a veil of darkness over Lyndon's eyes. And then the same weight settled on him, pushing his pack into his bruised back. A choked gurgle escaped from his mouth as his breath was forced out under the pressure. Yeren pulled her outer robe away from his eyes, leaning down to look at him upside down. She looked horrifying. He'd thought she looked halfway dead before, but with the fresh blood on her face, she looked as though she'd crawled out of her own grave. Don't fall. Nope, that's not right. Don't fall. Nope, that's still not right. Don't fall, she said, and Lyndon took her advice, hugging the cloud to his body. Her Madra filled the construct, and it lurched back up into the air. It didn't seem to want to rise, but she forced it up, jumping it back to the cliff in a series of awkward jerks. Finally, it slid through the gap in the tomb wall, and they both spilled out onto solid ground. Gratitude, Lyndon said between breaths. She raised a hand in acknowledgement, and a steel limb lifted along with it. It looked exactly like one of the 6 blades on the back of the Sword Sage's remnant, and now it dangled from Yaren's back like a single leg of a spider. Is that what gold looks like? He asked. Yeren began to fumble around in her robes, searching pockets. If my memory's true, Master left me. An instant later, her hand emerged with a badge of solid gold. In the center, there was a simple picture of a sword. She slipped the ribbon over her neck and held the badge, examining it. He collapsed onto his back, wallowing in pleasant relief. He hadn't wasted his life yet, and now he had a gold on his side. Do you trust me now? he asked. More than none, she responded, heaving herself on into a seated position, and the new limb on her back bobbed with her. Real test hasn't even arrived yet. Lyndon craned his neck, looking out the door, and he almost cried. 3 other rusty clouds had come to a stop, carrying men and women in white robes. Oh, look. Oh, look, he said. There it is now. Yaren didn't seem to hear him. She was kneeling in the corner of the tomb, next to something he hadn't noticed before. The body of a man in black robes. The stone around him was charred in a long black line, with a sword lay bare beside him. Its blade seemed unnaturally white. She bowed so deep that her forehead touched the ground. 3 times she bowed, as the first man from Heaven's Glory ran through the door. His hands were glowing golden, and his jade badge marked him as an enforcer. Enraged eyes fell first on Lyndon. Disciple, report, he demanded. Then Yaren rose from beside her master's body. She had left her own sword with him, and was sliding the white-bladed one into a sheath at her side. The silver blade on her back now rose like a scorpion's tail, and she turned her scarred face towards the Heaven's Glory Elder, a gold badge dangling from her neck. The jade scrambled backwards so fast that it looked like someone had kicked him. He screamed for the others to stop, to back up, to surround the tomb. Lyndon had discovered that he could only stay tense and afraid for so long before his body just grew numb. Yaren could frighten Heaven's Glory away from the tomb on her own, and if she couldn't, it wasn't as though he would be a great help. So he was free to pursue an idle theory that had bothered him for some time. From his pack, he withdrew the Star Lotus bud. It was pale white with streaks of pink, and the sort of pure color that he normally associated with remnants. Wait, where was that? And its petals were curled into a half bloom, as though it had frozen in the act of opening completely. I keep losing my spot. Jeez. As though it had frozen in the act of opening completely. It was a natural work of art. He bit it in half. It tasted like sweet grass with a slightly bitter undercurrent, but it dissolved like sugar on his tongue. He swallowed it in seconds, crossing his legs and straightening his back into a cycling position. They have to pull the tiger's tail, don't they? Yaren said. If they want their share sooner rather than later, What are you doing? The energy of the spirit fruit. Was it still a spirit fruit if it was an edible flower? He assumed so. Showed in his mind's eye as a bright pink tinged white. It dispersed in his stomach, flowing around his spiritual veins in a river of lights that tickled as they traveled. When they had traveled around his body, they tried to enter his core, or rather, his cores. When he had first read The Heart of Twin Stars, he'd theorized a few uses for the technique besides defense. He hadn't been able to test them without ripping his core in half, but now he had his chance. While keeping one core tightly closed, he directed the Star Lotus Mudra into the other. The right-hand core grew brighter, stronger. immediately nourished by the spirit fruit. It had a small effect immediately, but many of the pale pink dots stayed in the core, tickling him from the inside out. They would be digested over the next days and weeks. When he'd finished gathering the Star Lotus energy into one core, he inspected the other. It was totally clear. He emerged from cycling with a bright smile on his face. Yaren laughed at him. You look like you just tore that elder apart with your teeth. He rubbed at his front teeth, and his finger came back sticky with blood. He spat out a mouthful, but his enthusiasm was undimmed. I took half the Star Lotus. A lance of gold shot through the door, and she dodged to one side, bearing the white blade in her hand. You thought now was the opportune moment to fuzz up your core? Lyndon climbed onto the 1,000-mile cloud, beckoning her to join him. We're not fighting, and I wanted to test a theory. If Heaven's Glory wants me to spill some more blood, I'm not telling them no. Yaren strode over to the open door, her master's pale blade to one side. Even to Lyndon's numb heart, some feeling returned. Panic. We have to leave. Now. They won't follow us outside the valley. She wasn't listening to him, so he added, What would your master say about throwing your life away here? She deflected another lance of light, but she didn't leave the tomb. He'd say if I killed one of them for each of my fingers, I could die proud. Of course he would. Lyndon considered a number of approaches. His first instinct was to shout at her, reminding her of her oath. He considered begging, bargaining, even leaving her and taking his chances outside the valley. Quietly, he said, Please don't leave me to die. She flinched visibly, even as a trio of Heaven's Glory enforcers came up the stairs, their hands shining gold. The grip on her sword shifted. She leaned forward, then back. With a growl, Yaren swept her white blade across the doorway to the tomb. Their colorless sword energy hung in the air at neck height, frozen in place even as she turned and ran toward him. You can go rot, she said, shoving him to the back of the cloud and hopping in front herself. But bleed me if I'm leaving anybody, not even you. On their way out, Yaren sliced another pillar. The ancestor's tomb groaned, cracked, slowly crumbling under the lack of support. As they flew out the hole in the wall, the ceiling tilted and collapsed into a landslide of rubble, delaying Heaven's Glory, and lingering the sword sage forever in his killer's tomb. Oh, wait, that's not what that said. And interring the sword sage forever in his killer's tomb. They slid down the other side of Mount Samara on a 1,000-mile cloud, and as Yaren steered them down the slopes, Lyndon kept his eye on the scenery at the bottom. It was a rolling ocean of green, and every once in a while something stuck its head up over the treetops like a fish breaking the water's surface. He drank in the sight, because it was one no one in the Way clan had ever seen. This was the land beyond Sacred Valley. If you're through with the other half of that flower, Yaren called back, I'll give it a home myself. It'll do anybody's spirit some good. Apologies, but I still need it. The other half only went to one of my cores. You've got 2 short breaths to explain that before I push you off and let you roll down. So Lyndon explained the Heart of Twin Stars. It turned into something of a winding story, as he had to explain the Aura Spirit Fruit, his fight with the Mon family, the Empty Palm Technique, and eventually the 7-Year Festival. As soon as I found this manual, I had an idea. If I could separate 2 different types of Madra into different cores, Then maybe I could learn 2 paths. 2 paths, Yaren repeated. She didn't sound nearly as excited about it as he was. That'll cost you twice the work. You're having enough trouble with 1 path as it is. I wouldn't scrape yourself too thin trying for 2. I'm sorry, you must have misunderstood. I'm not on a path. They wouldn't teach me. I'd be open to learning a sword path if you had some extra time. She turned to him, her scarred face still streaked with blood. This is why my master would have killed your clan elders. Because they didn't teach me a path? I'll feed it to you in small pieces. You saw me stick solid sword madra in that doorway, true? Right, he said. True. What kind of technique do you contend that is? It's a forger technique, he said. And when I throw my madra out of my sword, striker. And when I call up all the aura from every sword in the room, that was a ruler technique. And he saw where she was heading. I know about all that. Some of the elders in my clan can use techniques outside of their discipline. She nodded along. Since you know, then answer me this. If anybody can do anything, what does your spirit matter? Anybody can't, he said. Most people can only learn a technique if their spirit has an affinity for it. Is that true? That's a mind bender for me, then, because Heart of Twin Stars sounds like a classic enforcer technique. He paused, because he wasn't sure. Enforcers could use their madra to make themselves stronger, and their techniques had to do something with strengthening the body. But the core was part of the body. Here's another riddle for you. That empty palm you worked out looks to me like a striker move. It only reaches a few inches. It's a rotten striker move then, but a runty cub is still a tiger. See, your test everyone in Sacred Valley loves, that bowl of liquid madra, it's a rotting trap of a test, and it's filled you all up with lies. Lyndon's breaths were coming more and more quickly, until it felt like he couldn't breathe. That test doesn't show you what you are, it shows you what you're best at. It shows where you start, not where you end up. You start as a forger, well, cheers and celebrations for you. That means you'll have to work extra hard as an enforcer. Outside of the valley, you don't get to call yourself a sacred artist until you've at least learned the basics of all 4 disciplines and harvest a remnant. To my eyes, every one of your elders are still in training. So then, how could I be unsouled? She shrugged. Never heard that word before coming here. You just started 2 steps behind. That's the spine of it. Nothing worth crying about. Some of them polished families can take a squalling baby from foundation to jade in 2.5 pills. It's practicing your path that's hard. And it sounds to me like you're halfway through with yours. For a long time, Lyndon couldn't say a word. The truth blasted through him, leaving him numb. He didn't need a path for his own. No, he didn't need to find a path of his own. He was already on it. Well, I'm going to take a quick drink of water. The wind pressed icy needles against eyes covered in tears, and suddenly he was scrambling through the pack on his back, digging out the Heart of Twin Stars manual. It was only halfway complete. The rest of the pages were blank. While Yaren asked him what he was doing and if he was crying, he juggled the manual, a brush, and a jar of ink. Anyone who founded a path was expected to take careful notes to pass their knowledge on to future generations. With careful hands, he wrote at the top of the page, "The Path of Twin Stars." Epilogue. Information requested. Current status of Weishi Linden. Beginning report. Weishi Linden and Yeren, disciple of the Sword Sage, leave Sacred Valley on the back of their constructed cloud. They plan to hide and rest before moving into the forest. Sacred beasts the size of buildings prowl in the shadows beneath the leaves, and even Yeren has no confidence in her power to protect them both. She knows that only if they are stealthy and quick will they survive, and then only if nothing goes wrong. She is not aware that the transcendent ruins have risen in the heart of the forest for the first time in 800 years. Its promise calls to sacred artists for thousands of kilometers around, and to the other, older, darker things that wait in the surrounding wilds. Divergence detected. The desolate wilds. Transcendent ruin. Continue. Divergence accepted. Continuing report. On the peak of Mount Samara, a crippled Heaven's Glory elder named Anzes picks through the ruins of what he calls the ancestor's tomb. His pride is trampled. The power of his school has been questioned, and now it seems that they have created for themselves a powerful enemy. The Sword Sage's disciple will return, he knows, with greater force and with vengeance. But despite his certainty, he has a deep-seated fear of the wilderness outside Sacred Valley. He could not survive it, and therefore he believes no one could. In his judgment, the sage's disciple must have doubled back. Where will she go, if not to the home of her ally, the unsouled Weishi Linden? He crafts a message to his fellow elders, urging them to march with all their flagging strength on the Wei clan. Divergence detected. The destruction of the Wei clan. Continue. Divergence accepted. Continuing report. As the members of the Heaven's Glory School evacuate their ancient tomb, a 5-tailed snow fox the size of a man waits nearby. He is soundless, scentless, his presence masked to both sight and spirit. He is an ancient sacred beast, one of the original inhabitants of this valley, and he is only seen when he wishes to be. He has followed the Unsouled Linden since the intervention of Suriel, the Phoenix, 6th judge of the Abaddon court. Though he does not remember the events prior to her temporal reversion, he has noticed the effects of her involvement and believes that Linden is favored by heaven. He watches the 2 young sacred artists leave the valley, and for the first time in centuries, he experiences hope. Maybe these children, blessed by the heavens, will save the valley from the dread god's return. Divergence detected. Return of the dread gods. Continue. Iteration 217. Harrow. Divergence report denied, Suriel's presence said. Report complete. The reports came to her in a mix of words, images, and impressions, retrieved by her presence and transmitted to her in an instant. She looked into Linden's past, his surroundings, his upbringing, even his future. He was an interesting distraction. Her presence told her that he had a 17% chance of surviving the desolate wilds, a 4% chance of making it past gold, and a 0.3% chance of ascending beyond Cradle. But in every world, in all the thousands of variations on humanity the universe spun out, people always loved to bet on the underdog. She would return to the reports later, but although they took virtually no time, they did take her attention. She needed to focus now, to treat the situation with the gravity it deserved. Machiel was coming, and the first judge of the Abaddon court demanded all of her concentration. Her hair had been restored to its radiant emerald shine, her eyes to vivid purple. She drifted in high atmosphere, waiting as fiery chunks flew out of the planet and passed her into space. This world was beyond healing. A glimpse of rolling, textured blue, and someone stepped into reality. Not Machiel, as she had expected. This man was younger and compact, with dark blue skin and rows of tightly packed horns instead of hair. Gadriel, second judge, and Machiel's loyal right hand. He was dressed as she was, in the seamless white armor. Jeez, in the seamless white armor of the Abaddon. I don't know why that was so hard to read. The mantle of Gadriel streamed from his shoulders like a furiously burning cape of pure starfire, just as the mantle of Suriel hung from her own. Instead of her correlation lines, which trailed from her fingers like ribbons of gray smoke and connected to the back of her neck, he carried a black circle strapped to his forearm like a medieval buckler. He'd brought his weapon, primed and ready for use. She summoned her own, a meter-thick bar of blue, but he held up a hand. Peace under the way. She clipped the weapon to her waist without banishing it. He wouldn't violate a truce, but he'd been too quick to offer one. Tell Machiel I haven't found him. My presence can give him a full report. He knows. He's looking himself. Since you remain unmotivated. The barb didn't disturb her, but the content of the message did. She'd been sent to hunt for Osriel because she was the only one of the 7 capable of finding him without being killed on sight. If she tracked him down, Osriel would talk to her. If Machiel found him, they would kill each other. Gadriel waited for the reality to settle on her. He thought that would convince you to search. If that wasn't enough, he turned to the burning planet. This might be. The planet beneath them fuzzed and flickered with visual static, even as it burned. Continents appeared in the ocean, vanished, appeared again. Water plumed kilometers into the air, calmed, shot up again. A city rose from the ocean in ruins, and then was drowned. When one world crashed into another, this was the result. Time, space, and reality itself bent and warped while the Way tried to force order out of the collision's pure chaos. Which one is it? Suriel asked quietly. She could have asked her presence, but she wanted Gadriel to hear the question. Iteration 216. Limit. It was scheduled for demolition no later than 2 standard months ago. Its adept population already evacuated. But they had no one to remove it. With Osriel gone, so now Limit had dragged Harrow with it into the void. Quarantine protocols? She asked. Effective. I have implemented the walls myself, so no other worlds would be drawn into this disaster. It only escalates from here. If we don't recover Osriel, or at least the Scythe, we could lose it all. He wasn't wrong. This was Sector 21. But if it was happening out here, it was potentially only days away anywhere. Sector 13, where she was born. Sector 6, with its rich history and gorgeous natural art. Even Sector 11, with 110, Cradle. Important worlds like Cradle, Haven, Sanctum, and Asylum would be protected, even in the event of total system collapse. The Abaddon would collect and quarantine these worlds, their last bastion against the infinite chaos. But in times like this, anything could go wrong. Cradle might be safer than anywhere else, but it wasn't safe. Acknowledged. Acknowledged, Suriel said. Designation 006, Surreal. Formally accepts the charge to locate and withdraw 008, Osriel, under censure. Gadriel nodded, his expression firm as granite. It always was. The way would crumble to dust before he smiled. She accessed the way, drawing flows of purple order around her as she prepared to exit Harrow. But the other judge didn't follow. He stood on nothing, with his arms crossed, black buckler facing the dying world. What is your mission here? Suriel asked. Mercy, Gadriel said. She stopped, the tendrils of layered blue returning to the way. She had faced patients in the past that were too far gone, where the only comfort she could offer them was a painless end. She had gained her power, in a large part, so that she never had to face that again. Not even death. Now even death was no barrier to her healing. And it still wasn't enough. A shield is meant to protect, she said. It's not an appropriate tool for this. She drew her weapon. Gadriel nodded, his arms still crossed. She wondered if this had been Machiel's plan all along, to make her face the reality of the situation by dirtying her own hands. It wouldn't change anything either way. This was still her duty. Heart aching, she activated her sword. The end of Cradle, Volume 1, Unsouled. Bloopers. Here, your fate is an absolute certainty, Suriel said. If you tried 1,000,000 times to go to the Nine-Cloud Court from where you are at this moment, you would die before you reached them 1,000,000 times. What if I was the hero of a fantasy novel? Lyndon asked. Well, yes, obviously, if you were the protagonist of some kind of story, the situation would be Suriel stopped mid-sentence and narrowed her eyes. Why do you ask? Lyndon coughed. No reason. Yaren looked down at Lyndon's body. It had been separated neatly in two halves, where he had tried to walk through the invisible forger technique she had left in the doorway. Essence of pure blue-white madra tinkled as they drifted up from the ground. He'd been too weak to leave a remnant. Yeah, she admitted to herself, I might have gone a little too far. While Yaren struck the construct with another ripple of sword madra, Lyndon stared at her. We don't need to fight him at all, he said. Get on the cloud and let's go. The strong don't run, Yaren responded. Many miles away, a man with long blonde hair choked on his wine. Yes, we do, he protested, all the time. And the others around gave him strange looks, but he paid them no heed. He pulled out a notebook labeled Lesson Plans at the top in large characters. He wrote the words Strategic Retreat. That's a fine place to start, he said, and snapped the book shut. Lyndon's own legs slid across the stone, as though his blood had become a rope pulling his body together. No part of him responded to his control, and he had to wait and watch as his flesh pulled itself back into one piece. In the sky, light blazed like a sapphire sun for an instant, then faded to show its true form. A pair of blue, fiery wings on the back of a woman in white armor. Lee Markuth stood with his chest heaving and a sword in his right hand as she descended. But he didn't attack. I demand a trial before he could finish the sentence, he was sucked away into an infinite void like water running down a drain. The woman from the heavens did not look at him, but kept her eyes on Lyndon. As her blue fire wings vanished, she spoke. Stand. Do not be afraid. Sorry, give me 1 second. Ah! Lyndon struggled to escape from the terrifying stranger, but his body still wasn't fully under his control, so he could only scream. The woman from the heavens looked taken aback, but she made a soothing gesture with one hand. Peace, I mean you know. Wait. Peace, I mean you know. Lyndon kept screaming. I don't want to. Don't hurt me! What is your. Ah! With a sigh, Suriel erased his memory. That makes the 294th time that has happened, her presence reported. I have compiled a list of possible causes. First probability, your face. Suriel muted her presence and left. Hesitantly, Lyndon raised his head and faced Elder Whisper. Pardon this one's ignorance, but does a path not end with gold? Elder Whisper barked a laugh. Gold? Are you serious? You think gold is the maximum? Well, yes, everyone here. What an idiot. Duh. Hey, everybody. Look at me. Gold is the strongest you can get. That's you. That's what you sound like. Now get on my tower, you moron. Elder Whisper spat at his face. Whitehall's face twisted in disgust as he looked at Lyndon. Trash! He gestured as though to toss the stolen dagger to the floor, but then stopped himself. You know, I was going to overload your core with my madra and destroy your spirit from the inside out, but I am holding this knife. I think I'll just stab you. Lyndon, already cycling the Heart of Twin Stars, froze. Are you sure you don't want to teach me a lesson about your superiority? It's tempting, but no, I think I'll just stab you. Elder Whitehall stabbed him. Several of the Heaven's Glory elders exchanged glances with one another, and many others simply sipped their tea in silence. I'm beginning to suspect you're not taking me seriously, Elder Whitehall said. Preposterous, the Grand Elder said, reaching down to ruffle Whitehall's hair. You're just as much of the school as anyone. Now, who wants candy? I do, Whitehall admitted. Such a good boy. I did not like that. The meeting was a disaster, Whitehall reflected, but at least he had candy. Mount Samara, Suriel's presence announced. Yeren, disciple of the Sword Sage, path of the Endless Sword. With her guidance, Suriel said, you may both leave this valley alive. She, too, has a fate that needs changing. Lyndon stared at Yaren's image, committing her face and name to memory. What will happen when I meet her? She'll cut you. Lyndon blinked. What? Don't worry. If you do it right, she'll just hold her sword to your throat. Only draws a little blood. Is there a way to stop her from cutting me? Suriel looked to her presence, but a moment later shook her head. I'm afraid her philosophy is very much sword first. Oh. Lyndon looked at Yaren's image, which was now animated and staring up at his face, like it could see him. Should I really be allying myself with someone so violent? She's not violent all the time. Yaren's image flung itself at Lyndon and tried to cut his throat before Suriel banished it. All right, Suriel admitted. That was a lie. Lyndon faced Waymon Keth, who stood taller even than he was, and twice as wide. The man seemed to take up more of the horizon than Yoma Mountain, looming over Lyndon and blotting out the rising sun. The older man's arms fell to his side, leaving his slate-gray robes completely undefended. The first blow is... Lyndon had been sure the man was about to say yours, but instead Keth rushed forward in a blur of speed. Mine! Keth announced. Then he punched Lyndon in the stomach. Hovering high above, Suryo glimpsed a large boy flying past her as he was blasted into the upper atmosphere. Wei Shi Jiran wasn't looking at his son at all, but he was fixed on the battle between Markuth and the Jades. Lyndon had to admit that hurt, even if it was all just a dream. He let his eyes slide shut to hide the sight of his kneeling father. When he woke up again, everything would be all right again. That was Lyndon's last thought before he died. The end of the Cradle series, Book 1 of 1, Unsouled. Amazon Review says, was that it? Critics rave. I thought it would be longer. Fantasy experts of America agree. My expectations were certainly subverted. Tune in next week for Will White's next new 20-page series in which a young country boy finds a mysterious sword buried on his farm and sells it for cash before going back to farming. Wonderful news. That is the very end. That is the end of Unsouled. We did it. We did it. We finished. We finished Cradle Unsouled. Now, all I have to do is on Sunday, come back to re-record chapters 1 through 3. So that way we have them all. Yippee, book 1 is done. Yeah, let's go. Okay. So now I want to take a quick look at something, including the one stream that we did for what's it called? The one stream we did for Unfair Flips, which we started reading the book. We had that stream was the first one. The second stream where we read the book was the first book reading stream that came out. That was chapters 4 through 8. Then we read chapters. Wait, didn't we read? We didn't get to chapter 8 in the book reading stream. We read chapters 4 through 7, and then read chapter 8 in the Hogwarts Legacy stream. I'm gonna quickly edit this. Save. Okay. Yeah, we read chapter 8 in the first Hogwarts Legacy stream, which we then read chapters 9 through 11 the next Thursday. A week later, we continued. So in total, it's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now it took us 7 total streams to make it through Cradle Unsouled. Although not all of those streams were a week apart. So I'd probably say it's around a month and a half that it took us doing weekly streams to get through Unsouled. But yeah, once this stream is over, it will be I will put it over to YouTube onto the VOD channel, and then Sunday, all of Unsouled will be on YouTube, and I can make a playlist for it as well. I'll have to go in and see if I can download the full videos, and then I'll have to splice out the chapter readings the single chapter reading in the Hogwarts Legacy stream. and probably add that to the end of the chapters 4 through 7 video in its own extra thing. Or I can add in the description the timestamp of when the chapter is, so that way I can just throw the whole VOD in the playlist, I guess. But yeah, so starting next Thursday, we will start um we will start Cradle Soulsmith. Starting at the beginning, and I won't be doing the same thing that I did with Unsouled. I won't read it outside of book reading streams. Or I guess I really only did that near the beginning, but I won't be reading it outside of book reading streams. So every Thursday we will read some chapters of Soulsmith. And here soon I'm going to be ordering in the third book, and hopefully I might see about getting the third and fourth book. But the third book is going to last us about 50% longer than than this book did, because it's roughly if you listen to it as an audiobook, it's about 11 and a half hours. So yeah. All right, well, oh, I never put the stream title up. Surely that didn't happen. 18 to epilogue. Yep, surely. No, stop that. Yeah, there we go. All right, well, I hope everyone that came in enjoyed. I do need to get going and get ready for archery, so I will be heading out. Let's see who's live. I think Fosty is live, actually. Yeah, she is. Fosty is live. We're going to raid Fosty. I will definitely try. You're on time for the raid, Santi. Uh, stream is ending right now. But yeah, I appreciate everyone who came in and was here for the for stream today. I appreciate you a lot. We're gonna go and do raid. Here's the raid message. I still need to fix it. I keep forgetting. And then here is the sub raid message for those of you who are subscribed. Hi Allah, welcome in. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. I very much enjoyed reading Unsouled, so I'm glad that we finished it. Next week we'll start with Soulsmith. I will be back on Saturday with Hogwarts Legacy and Lobotomy Corporation. I'm gonna try to spend equal amount of time in both. I try not to go too long because I do have work the next day, and then I will also be live on Sunday rereading the re-recording chapters 1 through 3 of Unsouled. The book is very good. Okay. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for coming in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.